Alright everybody, so this is a beginning basics photography scavenger hunt that I've compiled for you, and it can be very fun and it can be very challenging, so let's try and make it both. Alright, so let's go over it. So here's the scavenger hunt list that you want to go through, and if you need to, you can pause this video at any moment. You could pause the video right now so that you can write these down on paper, and as we talk about each challenge, you can pause it as you need to, rewind it, watch it over again. I really want you to challenge yourself to capture the best photograph possible. Alright, so I don't want any basic photographs. I want you to put in the best effort you can. I'm only going to challenge you to take one photograph. You can challenge yourself to take multiple, but let's make it our best effort, okay? So we're going to talk about leading lines and nighttime photos, landscapes and self-portraits. We're going to go over photos about animals and food, lawn and garden photographs. We're going to go over photographs about reflections. We're going to briefly touch base on macro photography, and we'll talk about that, as well as your self-interest, okay? So first up on the list is leading lines. Now we've talked about this before, and lines can be found everywhere if you just look. So try to locate lines in your surroundings, and then try changing up your viewpoint or angle to manipulate those lines. You want to lead your viewer's eye to the area of the photo that you want them to pay attention to the most. In other words, use lines to lead your viewer's eye to the subject of your photograph. Alright, so again, I want to challenge you to get the perfect shot, and you can achieve this by predetermining what kind of photograph you want to take, and do that before you even set out to take it. So when you're out there taking photos at nighttime, you want to be able to use any light source that's available. Okay, your photos, if they're going to be too dark, you do have some options. If you're on a cell phone, these options are limited, but try to crank up your ISO or just slow down your shutter speed. So again, I challenge you to step up your game. Test your creative self and see what kind of photographs you can compose. So when you're out there taking landscape photos, you don't actually have to take pictures of mountains and grasslands. Landscape photography is just basically the space that makes up your surroundings. Okay, so that can be the entire horizon in the distance, like you see here, but it can also just be a small section of your nearest sidewalk. Nonetheless, you're going to have to go outside for this one. Alright, so self-portraits. This is not a basic selfie. Rather, instead, it can be your best selfie ever. Now, if you take it serious, because you got to put in some effort. Now, if you really want a good photograph, try using a tripod. You can even use a timer, or maybe you have some friends that'll take the photograph for you, but a tripod is going to stabilize your photographs. They even make tripods for cell phones. Now, this task can be completed up close, like your school photos or social media accounts, or it can even be a wide-angle photo of like you sitting in the middle of a football field. Now, you're only limited by your own imagination, so don't forget that you have other options out there. You can always ask friends and family for help. Maybe they'll help you with your creative process. And don't forget that you can always consider the rules of composition when framing up your subject. There are other factors to consider as well, but to meet the task for this challenge, all you got to do is take a self-portrait. Alright, animals. First off, no, you don't have to take a photo of a snake. Okay, but here is a list of some animals that you could potentially photograph. Now, let's first start by saying that you don't have to take a super cool composite of a unicorn, alright? Now, that would be amazing, but it's really not feasible for this challenge. So I don't expect you to use Photoshop, and I don't expect you to use any fake animals. But challenge yourself to take the highest quality photo possible, and that means avoid motion blur, digital noise, other things like exposure issues, and even poor composition. So maybe you have some pets. Maybe you have a pet dog, cats, birds, snakes, lizards, bugs, mice, right? Anything that's a pet is fair game. Now, wildlife, on the other hand, is a little bit more limited, but nonetheless, you can still photograph any kind of wildlife you find. Birds, mammals, fish, invertebrates, etc. But some of these animals are going to be hard to photograph, okay? Some of the bugs are going to be too small for your camera lens unless you have a macro lens. Other things like birds are going to be too far away unless you have something like a telescoping lens. So for this task, I don't want you to take any pictures of plant life, okay? That's coming up soon. Next up on the list, foods. So here's some harsh truth. Nobody really likes your food photos, okay? Unless, that is, you put in some time and effort. Remember, it's all about the rules of composition and lighting at this point, but let's focus on composition. So here's a thought, right? You ate some really delicious food, and so you want to share it with the world. And all you got to do is take a picture of your dinner plate, right? Well, the truth is nobody really likes those photos, okay? But the food, it tasted great, right? And it even looked amazing. Well, you have to make it look better on camera, and so you're in charge of making it look amazing. So it might be a better idea to do this one at home, unless you want to set up some crazy overhead rig at a steakhouse, unless that don't bother you because they make pretty nice plates of food and it even has fresh steam and everything. But if you don't want to get out in public and you want to control your environment, then you definitely want to do this at home. No matter what kind of food you choose to photograph, if you follow the rules of composition, your photographs are going to come out just fine. So as I said earlier, we would come back to plant life, and that's what lawn and garden is all about. Okay, so what kind of plant life lives in your yard? You can take photos of any plant life available. Don't get stuck on this one too much, or any of them for that matter. You can do this at your own pace within your own capability. So maybe you have some household plants. Maybe they're not even real. Maybe they're fake. Maybe you just have a bundle of flowers from the dollar store. Either way, it's going to look great in a photograph. Okay, so again, let's not forget that I want you to challenge yourself in all of these. Test yourself and up your game by trying to capture the perfect shot. And so when you set out to find reflections, don't get stuck on mirrors. Reflections can be found in many ways. Try pouring water on concrete and then set your camera directly on the ground in front of the puddle and then take a photograph of some reflections that you see. So this scavenger hunt is for beginners, but anybody can join in and participate. So when I task you to take a macro photograph, I do not expect you to have any macro lenses. The photo of this scorpion was actually taken on a cell phone. So all you really got to do is just get close, zoom in, and see what kind of pictures you come up with. So yeah, it does help if you have a macro lens. So if you do have one, use it. When you're zooming in, you want to maintain your clarity. And so when doing that, you might need to practice this a little bit until you find the sweet spot on your camera. And that's basically the point at which you cannot get any closer without maintaining the clarity. Alright, so this one is a little bit easier to understand for most people. What are your self-interests and hobbies? This is easy to photograph sometimes, but other times, when you're thinking of it in terms of composition, it's not so good. And if you really want to show the world what you do for fun, capturing the answer to that question in the form of a photograph is not as easy as it sounds. And I want you to be creative because all of this is usually what defines us as individuals. How do you want to portray yourself through that photograph? Okay, and here's a hint. You don't actually have to be in the photograph yourself. Alright, so again, if you need to go back and rewatch any of this, go for it. And if you need to pause the video at any moment to write something down, don't forget that you can always do that. I do want to challenge you to capture the best photograph possible. So when you set out to take these pictures, I want you to spend some time and effort to create a photograph that you actually pre-visualize and want to come into fruition. So let's make this challenge fun and let's get to it. If you're feeling generous today, do consider hitting the like and subscribe button. Tap on the notification bell to be notified when I upload new videos, and you can share to anybody who's willing to learn, colleagues, students, friends, and family. Hope y'all have a great week, and I'll see y'all in the next one.